Garth, you're a bit of a prophet. Some of your writings are very prophetic. You challenge the churches on issues of justice and peace. So we look at Palestine at the moment and the UN vote coming up in a couple of weeks. What do you foresee the outcome being? Maybe your hopes, your fears?
There are both hopes and fears. The clear failure of the UN through the years since '48 to provide a Palestinian state is causing a nightmare. The collapse of the Oslo peace accords, the fact that they took Palestinians backwards, that was a betrayal of the Palestinians. So that's been a disaster. More and more land is being taken by the Israelis. That's a disaster. So what can happen at this point? There has to be some dignity for the Palestinians. Now, if the provision of a state will provide dignity, if it's the 67 borders, then that would be a positive move. The questions that surround it, there are questions that surround it. What would happen, for instance, about the right of return that's in international law for Palestinian refugees? What would happen about the settlements? What sort of deals would then be done? If this pushed the Israelis back to negotiating, the Israelis don't want to negotiate because they just want to dominate. That's what's been happening since from Oslo onwards. And I believe the importance is to say in negotiations you must have two sides negotiating. You can't have one side with the most powerful country in the world dominating. You have to have two sides negotiating. I believe a negotiation is quite possible. Quite possible. Really, there's things on the table that have been worked out for years. They are there, ready to be picked up. But they're not being picked up because there is a chance to achieve more. I certainly think this would be the thinking of the current Israeli authorities. They would feel they could achieve more by not negotiating. Now, what will happen in September could work for good. It could work for harm. It could cause expectations to be raised, and then it could cause immense frustration. But to me, the worst crime at the moment is that we have the Palestinian people imprisoned, treated as trash by the world community, ignored, and they are, why would we would never allow that to happen in our own society, to people to occupy and oppress and dominate and bomb at will. We would say that's not acceptable. And to my way of thinking, for those people who believe each human being is of infinite value, made in the image of God, you cannot say one group is more significant than another group. So provide a dignified future for the Palestinian people. And if this helps to do that, great. But let's watch it carefully in case it once again patronizes them and dominates them. Because then, if we do that, it may take time, but there will be an explosion down the road. And I believe the key, the only key to any peace for the future, is justice. Give them some justice. They won't demand absolute justice. They will demand justice that is fair to them, gives them a society and a dignity so they can live side by side with the Israelis, so both communities can find peace and security. And the only way to do that is justice for the Palestinians.
Why do you think the Americans appear to be moving in a direction of vetoing the UN resolution? What's in it for them?
The Americans have completely lost their way. I think we have to be clear about that. And the reason is an internal political reason. Obama has no power at the moment because he is dominated by those who would want Israel not only to win, but to dominate. And there are strong lobby groups. And because of elections, if Obama is seen to go up against that, he will lose the election. So he is now behaving as if he was in one of those more right-wing groups. And he's powerless, we have to recognise that. So it's a sadness, because I believe he's a man with a great vision for justice in this part of the world. But at the moment his hands are tied. We saw Netanyahu being blatantly rude to him and really just laughing in his face, basically. And Obama couldn't do anything because of his own constituency. So we have to recognise, it's interesting that there are voices now speaking from America, including leading Jewish voices that are saying this isn't acceptable. Just recently, one of them wrote an article called Apartheid on Steroids, which is saying a leading supporter of Israel went and saw what was going on and said, oh, we don't realise how bad it is. This is apartheid on steroids. We can't endorse this. So Jewish voices are starting to speak out very strongly to say, if there is to be a safe future for Israel, there must be a safe future for Palestine. There has to be some integrity and dignity and safety and security for Palestine too.
Europe traditionally has sided with the two-state solution. Where do you think Europe is going to stand on the UN vote? Together, or we're going to...
I'm not sure it'll stand together. I don't know is the answer. I don't know what Britain will do. I would like to think Europe would stand together and support it, because if that happened, it would give an alternative way of supporting the Palestinians. America really can't do that any longer. It's only on one side, and that's so obvious. We can all see that. But if there was, say Europe said, we will support Palestine and the state of Palestine, that could be quite a good moment. Europe supports Palestine, America supports Israel. Let's work together to make sure everyone finds a way forward. So there is a chance in all of this, if the politicians will take that chance. I think we've been quite badly let down by the politicians in their treatment of the Palestinians. This is the moment for them to stand up and do something for the Palestinian community and for the state of Palestine. If that doesn't happen, then I think the future is fearful.
And where does the Just Peace for Palestine fit into this as an organisation?
Just Peace for Palestine is a campaigning organisation amongst the faith communities, particularly interested in the church communities. We're trying to say to people, raise your voice on behalf of a just peace, because this will benefit both Palestinian and Israeli too.
How do you define a just peace?
In terms of something which, for instance, there needs to be some safety and security for Palestinian as well as Israeli, and the agreement of the 67 borders, which the Arab world have accepted and the Palestinians have accepted. In other words, a very generous offer by the Palestinians. If we do go to a two-state solution, if it was based on those 67 borders, that's a very generous offer by Palestine. And Palestine and the Arab world have said they would accept it. And this was really declared back in 2002. Now, if we went with that, there would be a degree of justice within that. It needs to be a viable state. It can't have no borders and all that sort of stuff. It has to be viable. If that could be achieved, I believe there would be a degree of justice. Is it ultimate justice? Is it absolute justice? No, because history has done something to the Palestinian people which leaves them wounded and suffering very deeply. But there is another alternative. If that's not acceptable, go to a one-state solution, which is democratic, which is allows all faiths to have equal rights, and to run it as we would run our own society here, as we would expect. Why not have a one-state solution? In other words, I think we have to say, if you won't go with this two-state, then go one state, but it must be democratic and just. And one way or another, both Palestinian and Israeli must be able to live in a context which doesn't continue to oppress and destroy. And Just Peace for Palestine is trying to make the church in particular aware something is wrong at the heart of what we once called the Holy Land. It's not a holy land at the moment. It's a disgrace what's going on there. It is shameful that politicians have ignored it. Our campaign is also saying to church leaders, stop taking one side on it. Let's speak up for justice. Don't be silent. We've been silent in history, and we've seen terrible things happen, as happened to the Jewish people, the horrors of the Holocaust. Don't be silent as we see another Semitic group getting destroyed. Don't do that, because we can do better than that. And we can link arms with Jewish people, with Muslim community, and all faiths together can work together, those who are not of the faith community, to make sure human rights come and justice comes.
And the website's justpeaceforpalestine.org.
.org.
Garth, thank you very much.